Well, it's that time again. That time when we saunter into the virtual saloon, mosey up to the bar, and discuss with subtle grins the 2024 election results. I'm joined today by Rod and Ken. I'm your host, Chris, and this is Three Pastors Walk Into a Bar. A little subtle growl
there.
At the end there.
Got the bear, woke up the bear.
I don't know. Rod is our newest addition to the pastoral staff. How you doing, Rod?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
I'm doing good, yes.
Now, you've been on here before, haven't you?
Yes,
though?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
a couple times.
So this is like your, what, third time?
Third time, I think.
Third time's the charm. That's what
There
they
you
say. Mm-hmm. That's what they say anyways. I don't know who they is, but,
Yeah, the proverbial.
you know, they say this.
They, them, and this, yeah.
Yeah. So before we get into this too far, we have our special segment of our show that everybody is just enamored with. Every Sunday, I get somebody coming up and saying, when can we hear that disclaimer again? They love it.
Award-winning.
You know,
Sure.
I would not be surprised if you get nominated for a Grammy, Ken. Yeah. I mean, do they give Grammys for? Probably not. Is there a Prammy, like for podcasts?
Podcast
Prammy?
awards?
A disclaimer.
They probably are.
Yeah. For best disclaimer,
Goes to Ken Billing.
Ken Billing.
In every endeavor in human life, we've got to have an award. Right?
That's true. Yeah. As long as everybody wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In America, there's got to be winners and there's got to be losers.
Everybody must win.
Well, at least our disclaimers aren't like side effects, you know. They go on and on and on.
Well, we kind of excluded those because we wanted people to keep listening. Continued listening to 3P podcasts may cause diarrhea, eye strain problems,
Ear numbing.
indigestion.
Okay.
You're on a roll today.
Yeah, a little bit.
Feeling good.
Yeah,
Feeling a little
I'm
snarky.
pretty happy. Yeah, the Tuesday really just filled me with joy.
That was an interesting.
Yes, it
Right,
was. I
wasn't
can't
it?
wait to talk about it. So hit the disclaimer.
All right. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the respective speakers and do not necessarily reflect the opinions, policies, or doctrines of Athol Baptist Church and its members.
Yeah, so I came home that night. We got invited to a couple of watch parties. People were doing watch parties for the election results, which I thought was kind of quaint. I think I'd known that people have always done that, but I don't think I ever really considered it before.
Yeah.
But in any case, we decided to stay at home because we just wanted to kind of see what was happening. And, you know, it was like, the thing is, like, if you get around a bunch of people that are watching a political thing all together, you don't just watch the political thing. You have to listen to everybody's political commentary as it's going on.
Turns into groupthink real quick.
And it's like, man, come on. But no, it was really great to get invited to something like that because I think that's fun. I think that people enjoying the election process is a good thing, right? Like, so we watched it at our house and we had to watch MSNBC, or not MSNBC. We had to watch NBC because it's the only one that we could stream for free. And we weren't going to pay for any service just so we could stream the elections from Fox or whatever, right?
Fox wanted money?
I don't know. It's the only one that we could find. We don't have, we just stream everything.
Okay.
So we don't have any kind of like network. We could have went over to Mom's and watched it, I suppose, but But we decided to
Then
stay
you'd
at
have
home.
to listen to her commentary.
Well, it's not even just that, it's like I'm not really a big person of like going and hanging out with people anyways, but
What?
in any case, we were at home when we were watching it, and it was cool because Ethan came in and joined us, and he watched the thing with us, and so, it was fun as a family watching the election. I mean,
It's kind of like
it was
a
cool.
generation or two ago when the family would gather around the radio to
Mhm.
hear what's going on outside of their own little local world.
Yeah, it was really similar to that, and
It was
we
kind
were
of a patriotic thing to it, right?
It had a real patriotic feel to it, had a real kind of coming back to America again
Mhm.
kind of feel, which is kind of how I feel like it has been this last week.
Mhm.
It just feels like, and I don't know that this is verifiable, but it just feels like America is back. Like we took a divergence and we were gone for a while, and the world knew it. But now it's like everybody's like, oh, America's back, right? I mean, you got Netanyahu calling Trump, you got
Mhm.
Putin calling Trump, you got Zelensky calling Trump, you got Korea contacting Trump. You got all these world leaders. They're like, oh, Trump's coming back. We better call him and
Yeah.
and get on
Who's
his
your
good
friend?
side because this is
Yep.
going to be bad. And so
Kind of reminds me of like a hurricane. It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah,
It's coming. And
yeah.
people get real foreboding. We better buckle down. We better hunker down. It's coming. It's here.
Yeah,
It's going to
yeah.
be chaos. It's going to be hell on earth. And then it's over.
Well, and that's kind of the way I think that most like progressives felt.
Yeah.
I think that but they probably still feel that way. But as far as like world leaders are concerned, I think it's just that, when you have a strong leader that just won't put up with garbage, they know that, so Hamas is called, they're wanting to end the hostilities in Israel. It's like, yeah, it's interesting.
Kind of like Dad's home.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. It's like, oh, Dad's home. We got to quit messing around.
We're not going to be able to.
Yeah, we
to fool Mom anymore. Dad's here.
We
He's
can't
got
do
a
this
big belt.
anymore. Yeah, mom is at home and they're doing stuff, and then Mom's like, just don't, and they just keep doing stuff,
Right.
And then
You're
Dad
not
comes
gonna do
home and it's
anything,
like,
Mom, we
oh,
know.
well, I guess we got to stop now.
So now the media is here and wait till your father gets home.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's kind of the
Yep.
way it feels, and it's been refreshing to be able to celebrate America again, and the kind of things that go along with that. But man, the way that the progressive left has turned on each other, and then also how they just haven't learned.
Mm-hmm.
Like it started
don't
almost
get it.
immediately.
They don't get it.
It's like, well, I got the demographics. I'll go through them here in a little bit, but it's like, well, white women voted for Trump in larger numbers, and they had an opportunity to get a woman into office, and it's just racism and misogyny, and and they went through the whole list of all the easies that people have or whatever. They don't get it. They just don't get it. They don't understand that people don't care about that stuff. Nobody cares about what your sex is, or when you're talking about politics in general, nobody even cares about what your sexual preference is. One of our greatest proponents for the conservative movement, particularly in Pennsylvania, is a really effeminate guy that just did amazing stuff, and nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares.
Well, there's kind of a line between politics in general and identity politics.
Mm-hmm.
And the left has majored on identity politics, and the right has just said, nope, we're not playing that game. That's not the role of government.
That's because that's what they have to work with.
Yeah. So, like, there's a lot to talk about, right? I was looking through this list of stuff, and gosh, it's like, where do you even start? But there was a massive turnout. I think it was 159 million people voted. which there's a weird thing happening there. I don't know if you guys have been following it. But they were looking at the numbers this year, and they were talking about, it's record numbers of people have voted, 159 million. Compared to last time Trump ran, it was 158 million or something like that. So we broke the record. But when you look at Joe Biden, the Joe Biden race, the total number of votes was like 180 something million. 30 million more.
And where do those votes come from?
Exactly. That's kind of the thing, right? It's like, okay, yeah, how are we 30 million more than any election in the last like 2 decades?
Right.
That's a massive number.
I mean, 146 million people, and you have 180. That's odd.
Yeah, it's just really strange. And so that's something to track. I imagine you're going to see more about that as time goes on. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some more indictments coming down for election fraud in the next 4 years to clean all that up. But, I was listening to one guy, and he was talking about how he was in Congress and he was doing this congressional hearing. I wish I could remember who he was, but he made this comment that we have all these election laws on the books, but if we don't enforce them, there's no point in them being on the books.
Yeah.
No.
It's like, you got to start arresting people for this stuff. Like these people that are coming to these election boxes and putting in multiple ballots. I don't care who they're putting the ballots in there for. They need to be prosecuted. And so, yeah, hopefully, that there's enough alarm bells going off now that people are beginning to see that something wasn't right in that election. And yeah, it's been pretty interesting. But in any case, yeah, record turnout. What was the Electoral College vote? It was
312 to 226.
Yeah, 312 to 226. And the Republicans will maintain control of both the House and the Senate. So as of this, I think it's 53 now, but it was 52-46 in the Senate at this time. I think it's 53 now for the Republicans.
So has the House confirmed that?
And the House is 214 to 205.
So it is confirmed.
Wow.
214 to 205.
Yep.
And they said they thought they were going to be close to come in.
It was a landslide. It was a true red wave.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how the media is still trying to say that, well, it's close. We can't call it yet. It's like, what, are you trying to dig for votes?
That was one thing. We were watching the election, and we flipped back and forth between like 5 or 6 different networks. And we were primarily watching Newsmax, which leans right, but whatever. But I was going back and looking at 4 or 5 others: CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, and I think the other one was, can't remember who the other one was. And Newsmax called it first, and it took hours before the other networks finally updated and conceded defeat.
North Carolina.
They were dragging their feet.
Yeah.
They did not want to say it.
I was watching Daily Wire at the same time I was watching NBC, and they had an independent group that was doing their electoral map. And yeah, like they would call a state, and as we were watching NBC, like an hour to 2 hours later, they would finally call that state, because they were just holding off and hoping and hoping and hoping. Meanwhile, this company that's working for the Daily Wire, they're like, yep, North Carolina, beep. Yep. Pennsylvania, they called Pennsylvania 2 hours before NBC ever even thought about it. That's a pretty incredible story. Actually, he swept every single swing state.
Yes.
Every single one of them.
Yeah, so you got the electoral map. That's impressive. But the one that's even more impressive,
the counties,
the county one.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's only a handful of cities. Democratic.
What's funny is
in which state are you thinking of?
All of them.
Look at California. California is showing more red than they have. But we've known that the foothills are red.
Yeah,
it's only
the major cities. Anywhere where you have a college or you have an abundance of social services.
Yes,
that's where you're going to get all the Democratic votes.
They get on the rolls and they don't want to let go.
But see, that's the thing, right? That's why the Democrats lost so poorly, is because they focused on the same things that they always focus on.
Yep.
They didn't realize that it's not about racism. It's not about misogyny. It's not about any of the stuff that they've been pushing for the last, 4 years. It's about, can I put food on my table, and are there illegal immigrants entering our country and killing people?
Yes.
That's what it was about.
They had no message for the right at all.
No.
But disdain.
Well, they had no message for centrists. Like anybody who was even slightly right or even slightly left of center went Trump. I mean, that's probably the most telling thing about this whole thing. Like CNN put out this comparison between the 2020 exit polls, 2016, 2020, and 2024 exit polls. And by every single metric, Trump gained almost, right? So Harris, it's funny because on this chart, there's a blue line, and it goes from 16 to 20 to 24. And and when you're talking about like gender in general, like women, it went down for Clinton, it went down for Biden, it went down for Harris to historic lows, and it went up for Trump in every single race. Men, it stayed level, even though he gained 13 points in 2024. The Democrats lost those 13 points. It just goes on and on and on. Like he gained in black men. Harris lost. They've lost since Clinton. In Clinton, they were up 69. Biden, they were up 60. Harris, they were up 56. They've lost every single election. They've lost black men. Every single election. Black women, they gained 4 points, but that's after Biden lost them 9. Latino men, this is the one, right?
Yeah, they came through big.
Yes. Clinton was plus 31. Biden was plus 23. And in 2024, Trump completely flipped it to plus 12. That's a 30-point gain.
Wow.
30 points. That's unreal. Like that should not happen.
Yeah. That's the border issue right there.
It is.
It sounds like
that's Latinos who came to this country legally are resenting the number of Hispanics coming in illegally.
Yeah.
My daughter mentions this in the interview. I hope we can get to here a little bit later. But she said, "Yeah, they just don't like it.
Yeah,
it's
no.
not right."
If you look at the county map of Texas, like in 2016 when he ran against Clinton, the entire peninsula, bottom peninsula of Texas was blue. When he ran against Biden, all of the border was blue. The border to Mexico.
Okay.
In this last race, there were 2 counties that were blue. And only one of them was on the border.
They're tired of it.
Everyone else went red. I mean, he slaughtered her in Texas. It was embarrassing. Like the entire thing was kind of embarrassing for her because, I mean, she put a lot of effort into it, probably, but
a lot of money for sure.
The media did not help her. Like they kept pushing the narrative that was just pushing people farther and farther away from the progressive left.
I read a story this morning about another poll, and polls are polls; they're an opinion. But this one, kind of, I think, hit it on the head. It reads: according to exit polling from NBC News, parents of minor children backed President-elect Donald Trump over failed Democratic nominee Kamala Harris by a 9-point margin, a shift of 15 points from the 2020 election. 15 points among parents of minor children. In the 2024 race, Trump won voters who have children under the age of 18 living at home with them, 27% of the electorate, with 53% of the vote compared to 44% for Harris. So 9 points difference between parents with minor children. Harris won all the remaining voters by 2 points, meaning that parents with minor children were the crucial demographic to his victory. In 2020, parents with minor children not only supported the Biden-Harris ticket by 6 points, but they were 3 points more likely to vote Democratic than voters who did not have minor children living at home.
Wow.
So it was parents. It's about the kids. It's about family.
Yeah.
It's about the inflation. It's about the economy, stupid. And
Yeah,
they
well,
didn't get it.
Adults 45 to 64, he flipped that demographic. That demographic has always been Democrat to a certain degree. It's been a slim margin, but it's always been Democrat. This year, that flipped, ages 45 to 64. And then the other one that flipped was suburban white voters.
Mm.
Suburban voters turned out for Trump this time. He gained 4 points in suburban voters. And that's what made the difference in the majority vote. You know, I mean, even people in Democratic strongholds were voting for Trump because they're just tired of the nonsense. They're tired of the economy. They're tired of endless wars that they don't agree with.
Yeah.
You know, they're just tired of rampant inflation. They're tired of being taxed at 50% of their income. You know, it's gotten to a point where the American people have basically spoke up and said to Trump, we're giving you a mandate to fix this garbage.
Yeah.
You know,
Because Harris had communicated no strategy for any of these issues.
No.
She just deflected and went back to the same old narrative.
And the only thing that she even expressed anything is she wanted the death tax to be raised to 50%.
Oh, she was going to raise the corporate tax.
Yep.
Income tax was going to go up.
She was going to hurt people. And
Yeah.
they saw that. You know, we talked before the podcast a couple of days back about where are these polls coming from. And I'm looking at the District of Columbia and how many people voted for Harris. I think that's where they must have been pulling the polls at.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
I think D.C. is where those polls are coming because that's the only place I see that she had a command lead of 92%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, any big city, she had a commanding lead. She did continue to do well with black, what they call uneducated voters, which I think is a ridiculous term.
It is.
It's just so stupid. You know, just because you didn't go to a major university, you're uneducated. It's like, can you please get a different terminology for people? But in any case, she performed well with them, and white educated women or white college women, she did better with them. And that's all tied in with diversity, equity, inclusion, critical race theory. You know,
Abortion rights.
She did way better with white men in college. I mean, the number of them that supported her went through the roof, man. But yeah, that goes along with this whole, you know, it's like diversity, equity, inclusion. White people are terrible. We must pay for our sins kind of thing. It's just such ridiculous nonsense that the majority of America just rejects out of hand. They're just like, this is stupid. And I think that the American people, yeah, it was definitely a mandate to Trump to take care of this stuff.
I know.
Get it done.
I'm proud of our country
Mm-hmm.
from this election. I'm proud that we didn't have as much election interference, as far as we know, as we did last time. It didn't get worse. I'm proud that, I've always felt that middle America, rural America, suburban America was a big silent majority that doesn't speak up a lot until you push them too hard, and then they're going to come out in force, and they did.
Yeah.
And they came out in the polls, not on the media.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the beauty.
Yep. Well, that's the thing that was really powerful about this campaign, though. Like Trump, he was smart, man. He didn't do a lot with the mainstream media because he understands that nobody listens to them. And he did exactly what he should have done. He went to podcasts. He was on Joe Rogan. He went to Theo Vaughn. He was with Dan Bongino. You know, I mean, these people have lots of followers and lots of viewers. And a good majority of them are white men. And men of color, even like lots of men of color have switched over because of a lot of these podcasts. And Joe Rogan's not even a Republican. I wouldn't consider him a conservative. He's probably more on the conservative side of liberal, but he's still pretty liberal. but still in all, you know, I mean, it's like Trump knew what he was. His campaign managers knew what his Secretary of State or his Chief of State, she knew what she was doing.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
Yep.
she's
sharp.
savvy. That girl, boy. Whew. Watch out, Washington, because she's something. Yeah, you know, I mean, it was just, it was a mandate for Trump. It was also a mandate against progressivism. It's just too extreme.
Yeah.
And people they don't want that. They're tired of it. And people like Joy Reid still push it.
My goodness.
You know, it's like these people on The View, you know, I mean, they're still pushing this stuff. I mean, this one girl was on The View and she was saying, you know, the reason why Kamala Harris did not get into office, and before she could even finish her phrase, that girl, I can't remember her name now, is the girl that sits just to her right. She goes, misogyny. You know, it's like, and then she finished her phrase and it was like, the border.
Right.
You know, it's like, no, it's got nothing to do with her being a woman. If she had done her job, I'll guarantee you this. If the Democratic Party had nominated Tulsi Gabbard instead of Kamala Harris,
it would have been tough.
That'd been really tough.
I'm not sure that Trump could have pulled that one off because she's smart, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And she is not as way progressive as Kamala is. That would have been a really tight race. Hey,
And if
you
she'd
know
have
what?
picked as her VP Shapiro from Pennsylvania,
Oh my gosh.
that would have been
It would have been over. He wouldn't have survived that. Yeah, a Gabbard Shapiro ticket. Yeah, he wouldn't have survived that. It would have been over.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no way you could surmount that because a lot of Republicans that are a little bit left of center would have voted for a Tulsi Shapiro ticket. Yep.
Can you imagine what that red and blue would look like if the Electoral College wasn't a winner take all in some states? Like California, if it wasn't a winner take all and the red counties got to have their electoral for them, I can imagine that blue wouldn't even be on the map.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. I don't know. There must be a decent argument for winner take all because there's only one state left that doesn't do that. What state was that? I think it's a middle.
Nebraska.
Yes, Nebraska. That's it. Yep, Nebraska.
Well, actually, there's two. Maine and Nebraska do sections.
Oh, Maine does too?
Maine does too.
Okay.
Yeah. There
I
was
wasn't aware
four
of
that
that.
went to Trump in Maine.
Okay. So, yeah, you got and I'm not sure what the benefit of that is. I mean, I suppose that if it was spread out evenly, it would be beneficial, but it seems to me like just the winner take all is pretty. If you get a majority of voters, that's democracy. A majority of voters have voted for a candidate in a state. They should get all of that state's votes because that's what makes it a republic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not majority rules. It's it's a representation of the states. So this either way, it probably works so long as the Electoral College remains. You know that when Trump won the first time, there was this conversation about eliminating the Electoral College, and they wanted to go in and eliminate the Electoral College, and it's like, boy, that's the biggest mistake you could ever make. Because then what you're going to have is you're going to have like 5 cities determining who the leader is for the country every single time. And as long as you pander to those people, you're going to be able to do whatever you want. They knew it. Our forefathers knew what they were doing.
Yep.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But yeah, the data that's coming out of this election is impressive. And it doesn't even matter who you are. You have to recognize it. Like even Joe Scarborough, for heaven's sake, was recognizing, you know, that the Democrats just flubbed this one.
Oh, yeah.
And he's still preaching the same kind of nonsense, but he understands at least, you know, it's like when butter costs $7 a stick, people are like, yeah, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we don't want to be communism. We don't want to be lined up in bread lines. You know, we're way too wealthy and successful for this. This is ridiculous. And so the idea that Trump ran on this empowering America to take its power back to make nations start paying us again. You know, it used to be before we had a federal income tax that America made its money on tariffs. And now, like, tariff is like a bad word to the Democrats or something. You know, it's like, oh, no, we can't do tariffs. You know, things will get bad. Prices will go up. It's like, well, prices may go up, but guess what? People have more money in their pocket.
Well, tariffs doesn't fit their narrative of one world government either.
No.
That's
or
the problem.
equal outcomes.
Or equal outcomes.
Or equal outcomes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So his message just resonated with people. You know, people want America back.
And they understood him.
Mm-hmm.
There was no trouble understanding Trump.
Nah.
Harris, man, I could not believe some of the stuff she was saying.
Yeah. Well, and then she would just flip-flop all the time on stuff. You know, it's like you never knew what she stood for.
She's like Jell-O. She's like mercury. It just flows to the lowest spot.
Yeah. And whatever group that she was with, she told whatever lie she needed to fit in with that group. You know,
And she tried to
it's just
speak,
obnoxious.
and she tried to sound Southern. She tried to sound black. She tried to
Well,
sound...
that's exactly what I'm talking about. That kind of stuff. It's all theater to her.
Yeah.
It's all theater. And it probably is all theater to her because she's probably not even the one in charge. There are probably more powers behind her that are telling her what to do.
Yeah.
And that's what they hate about Trump. They despise that about Trump because
Trump doesn't have an Obama behind him.
Trump just doesn't care.
Nope.
You know, he doesn't care. You know, it's like, you know, like when you have friends like Elon Musk, who's just, you know, they start censoring him by pulling his sponsorships on X, and they're like, well, we're not going to advertise on X anymore if you don't remove X, Y, or Z posts. And Elon's just like, go F yourself.
Yep.
You know,
That's
it's like,
okay.
you know, if it costs me some money to have my integrity, whatever, I don't care. Money's cheap. It may make it every day, you know, but that's the kind of mentality that they just can't have because it doesn't steer the country in the direction that they want it to go, in this direction of control and lack of freedom as opposed to more freedom. And, you know, I think back to when the pandemic was happening and you had these movie stars coming on TV talking about you need to get the vaccine. Who cares about your freedom? It's like, I care about my freedom.
Yeah.
I would rather die than surrender my freedom. Well, I don't really know how else to say that. You know, it's like,
That was surprising when they started talking like that.
yeah,
It really was.
yeah. It's, but
Because they weren't saying that when they talked about putting cameras in places.
well, they don't care because none of that stuff applies to them. The laws don't apply to them. And that's what they hate about Trump too. Is like he's just going to make the laws apply to everybody. Everybody's under the same laws. Nobody gets special treatment.
Nope.
You know, and yeah, you know, I mean, it's like Kim called her dad, and the day after, and she was said, "Hey, Trump won," and he's like, "Yeah, I know. Start drilling, baby. Drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill."
Yeah, because everybody knows, you know, the only way that America is going to be successful is if we ramp up the means of production.
Yep.
We just have to produce.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just basic economics. You can't print money into wealth. You have to produce. That's how it works. And so, yeah, you know, I'm like, drill, baby, drill. Get the frickin' fracking. You know, I mean, do the things, man. You know, make us wealthy again. You know, I want to see my income taxes go down. I want to see a wealth fund established for America. He's wanting to establish instead of funding colleges, he wants to take some of the production of the United States of America and make an American university.
Yeah, I read that.
Did you read that?
Yeah, that
where
was a very unique, interesting, creative idea.
Yeah, you could go to this place. You could receive a 2, 4, or you could receive a master's degree, bachelor's degree, associate's degree in a field that they carried. And the federal government would be required to recognize your degree. And it would be absolutely free to any American citizen.
Well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that really what the left's asking for, but in their liberal colleges?
Yeah. Well, that's just it. They want their propaganda machines to be funded. And Trump's just like, no.
Nope.
Yeah, and he's already said, it's like if you promote DEI or transgender education or any kind of inappropriate sexual material to children in schools, your federal funding gets pulled.
As
No
where it
questions
should be.
asked. That's the
As
way it
where
should be. Yeah. And so, man, these are things that people support. Even homosexuals support that. The amount of homosexuals that voted for Trump is just off the hook. It's just crazy. Like, you wouldn't think that was true because you'd think they would be afraid that he's going to take away his freedoms. But I was watching this one lesbian who has a X account, and she was making a statement on there, and she's like, all we wanted was the right to be married. That's all we wanted. And we got that. And then the T comes along in LGB and ruins it.
Yep.
They ruined it. And now everybody hates us and we want them done. And then they added themselves to us, and then they started going after children, wanting to cut off children's genitals. And yeah, she was like, we're not doing that.
That's not them.
No, we're not doing that. And that whole movement saw a massive divide. Christians need to be aware of that because there is an opportunity there to reach out to people.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to win many transgenders to Christ because they're really caught up in not only a political ideology, but also a mental disorder as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it too. Mental disorder is the biggest problem.
For sure. 100%. But there's an opportunity there. But the amount of people who are homosexual that turned out for Trump is just, that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But they did because they're also the same messaging that the major media networks, they just can't seem to grab, that people are just tired of the woke crap.
Yep.
They're just tired of it.
Well, and every time you put a T or any of those things after it, you hurt somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Like those who were getting help for having been born weird, if you want to put it that way. They lost their funding because the T is taking that away.
Yeah.
So let's put the money into somebody that wants to become a woman that's a man. Well, that's what the left wants to push because, they can.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it shows why they didn't win.
Well, I don't want my tax dollars paying for it.
Nope.
You want to
No,
get
thank you.
sexually reassigned, you can pay for that yourself. I don't want to be involved with it. And I think that's what most people feel. I mean, most people feel like, it's like, if you want to change your sex, it's a free country. Do whatever you want to do. I just don't want to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
And don't ask me to call it normal.
Yep.
Because I won't.
Yep. And the rhetoric that comes out of it is just ridiculous, man. It's like, people, have you seen the movement of the women shaving their head and vowing not to have sex with men? They call it the 4B movement. That originally started in Korea because the women were fighting for equal rights for women. And so they vowed to not have sex with men until they could get their equal rights, which I don't know how effective that was in Korea. Apparently it was effective enough that there's a group of liberal women in the United States of America that thought it would be a good idea to go on TikTok and show themselves shaving off their hair and saying they're not going to have sex with men until Trump is out of office. And it's like, so Trump has not even taken office yet, and there's already less abortions, already less immorality. I mean, all those women are not whoring around now. I mean, that's like
Win-win.
bonus.
Yeah, it's weird. I watched this one little reel on Facebook of some libs on TikTok again. Oh my gosh, they were losing their minds, screaming and yelling in their cars and crying and panicking and
just screaming at the top of their lungs, yelling and
Brenda and I watched one at high school. Decided to open up cookies and milk in the cafeteria and stop class because Trump won. I'm thinking high school. What do these kids know about it in high school? What their mom and dad told them?
Well, you could also teach them to just suck up your loss like
a real
everybody
person.
has done. for
any football
their entire
team,
lives.
Yep, like any other football or sports player has to do once in a while. Will grow up.
Yeah, it's just insane. You know, I was watching. We were watching the football game yesterday. We were watching Tampa Bay play the 49ers. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Nick Bosa, who is one of the pass rushers for the 49ers, he got fined $11,000 for wearing a MAGA hat at a press conference, which, to be fair, people were freaking out about that. But the NFL was also fining people for kneeling as well. People don't know that. They don't talk about that. They only talk about it when it fits their narrative.
So they're fining both sides.
They're fining everybody. You don't make Nick Bosa is an employee of the NFL. And so when you violate their policies, they fine you. And the NFL's like, the reason you don't see any kneeling anymore is because they were fining people. They're like, this is your job is to go play football. That's your job. Mm-hmm. We don't need you to be making political statements and all this other kind of stuff. We just need you to do your job. And they asked Nick Bosa, it's like, well, was the $11,000 worth it? And he was like, yeah. And then
hat wasn't very bold. It was white and yellow.
It gets better, right? So yesterday they're playing Tampa Bay, and Nick Bosa sacks Baker Mayfield, who's the quarterback for Tampa Bay. And when he comes off of it and he gets over to the side, him and a couple of his other linemen, they start doing the Trump dance. And that was the thing.
Try to find him for that.
There's a whole montage of people in football games doing the Trump dance after they got a sack or got a touchdown or whatever. There's a whole, yeah. It's a completely different story than it was when he won the first time. You know, when he won the first time, you had people crying at Hillary's thing, screaming and yelling because their lives were over. This time around, you didn't have any of that. You just didn't have any of that. I think it's deep down, people know, well, the first 4 years with Trump really wasn't that bad. Mm-hmm. So I guess there's really no reason to cry too much.
Seeing Nancy Pelosi with tears didn't bother me. That one just didn't bother. I mean, I don't want to see her destroyed, but same token, it's like
I really have to work to have love in my heart for that woman. I really do. We're know,
told not to hate, but
no. I mean, I know that it's wrong to have kind of the feelings that come into my heart when I see her, and I'm working on that because I don't want to feel like that towards anyone. But she is particularly challenging for me. I don't know why. Like, I don't struggle that much with AOC or with Rashida Tlaib or, with any of those people. But her, for some reason, man, I don't know, man. She just gives me the willies. I just can't look at her the same way I look at everybody else. It's just weird.
When you look in her eyes, if there could be an evil sight in her eyes, I would say she has it. Maybe. I don't know. If
it's just something about her that is weird. But in any case, we didn't have a lot of the same kind of stuff that was happening the last election. Like a lot of the riots and a lot of those kind of things. But apparently there were some things happening. And you interviewed your daughter, right? She had something happen to her.
Yeah, we talked the Wednesday morning. And she started relaying this story to me, and I'm going like, wow, that sounds just way too coincidental. Too many barriers and hurdles and problems just in voting in person.
Yeah.
For that to be coincidence. And so we set up this call, and I asked her to, be recorded to tell her story of voting. And, kind of the conspiracy stream in me came up a little bit that Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, because I was expecting
some kind
there
of
to be
like,
stuff happening.
Oh, look, 10 million votes just
Chicago,
came out of this thing.
It's
like, that's what I was expecting.
Cities. And so I was maybe a little queued up for it. And in hindsight, I don't think there was really anything nefarious going on there in Kennewick, but it also tells another story that I think is worth telling, so that's why we have this recording.
All right, well, let's listen to it, see what she has to say.
Today I'm talking with my daughter, Kristen Freeman,
and she told me that she had an interesting story of her voting experience. Now, you live down in, actually over kind of in Kennewick, Washington, correct?
Correct.
Right, and that's in the southeast corner of Washington State. And we all know that Washington State is one of the most progressive states in the union as far as pretty much anything. I mean, they're trying to be the leader, and I understand that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think what you experienced, and you told me your story yesterday, kind of is kind of a foreshadowing of what we can probably expect in many more states in the future. And
Yeah.
so, go ahead and start at the beginning and tell me, the kind of what happened is you decided you were going to vote this year, that it was important to you and you wanted your vote to count.
Well, definitely with it being an election year, a presidential election year, I was very invested in making sure that my opinion was known. So as it got closer to election day, I realized, hey, I haven't gotten my ballot in the mail. That's really strange. Never has been a problem in the past. So I got online to kind of find out, well, what's the deal? Do they have a old mailing address for me? Was there something on my part that I needed to have done that I missed? And going on the website, I found out that my voter registration was actually inactive, and was kind of surprised by that, but figured, well, that's not a problem. I'll just figure it out and get my vote cast. But it was past the date to actually fix those.
Oh,
I think you're
Issues
there it is.
online, and I
There.
had to go in person. So election day, I'm realizing, oh shoot, I need to get to wherever I need to be to vote in person. And going online, I'm looking for anything that will give me an idea of where I can go to vote in person. Um, Research is kind of a part of my job, so it's not something that I'm unfamiliar with. So usually when I'm looking for information, I'm able to find it pretty easily. But surprisingly, that was not the case in this situation. I wasn't able to find accurate or even a lot of information about where I could go to vote. One of the places that did tell me I could go was Kennewick City Hall, which makes sense. You would think that they would know kind of what's going on in their county. So I drove down there. It was very quiet, very unlike an election day.
no
There
line
was
around the block.
no line around the block. Not a lot of parked cars. It almost looked closed, to be honest. I was a little concerned that maybe I'd missed the business hours, but there were people going through, dropping off their ballots in the drop-off box. But that kind of was the only indication that anything was going on. So when I went inside, there was one lady in her office, in a dark office of many. Just this poor lone soldier. And I, told her, hey, I'm looking to vote. I need to get this figured out. And she said, yeah, we've had a few people come by. We don't really know where to send you because the address online isn't correct. And so let me just kind of tell you where it's at. And I'm a little bit new to the area. I've only been here for 3 years. So still not completely familiar with everything around me. But she was telling me, you know where the old fire district was? Well, no, I don't know where that is. Do you know where Target is? Yes, I know where Target is. Well, it's behind Target by the Great Floors building. And that was as good as she could tell me where to go. So here I am on my adventure to figure this out, drive over there, and I find the Benton County Elections Office. Well, surely they should know what's going on. Pull into the parking lot, and there's just a small sign out front that says no in-person elections here. Go across the street. Well, across the street is where the jail and courthouse system is, DSHS, the administration hall. So apparently it's at the administration hall. So you have to figure out where to park because it's all surrounded by a fence. So it doesn't make it easy to get there. Finally get there, and there's just this small sign on the administration hall building that says in-person voting here. And that was it. There was no line. There was no group of people. It was just me and the lady in the lobby who was passing out material to help people who wanted to vote or needed to fix their information on their voting record. Going in to that building, the lady that helped me was very sweet, but she said that they'd been having an issue all day trying to pull up registered voters in their system, which I thought, well, that's really inconvenient for such an important day. Kind of strange. But she was able to maneuver the system, get it figured out, get me my ballot, and then I was able to vote. But later that day, I had a meeting with some of my colleagues from work, and there were several ladies there that asked me, well, where did you vote? Because I've been trying to figure out where to go vote all day. And where I was sent was an abandoned strip mall, and there was no indication of where to go or what to do, and they weren't finding any information online either. So
Wow.
I thought that's really odd for something so important to be so obscure. You would think something this big would be everywhere. It shouldn't be a mystery to anybody, and especially with county buildings and elected officials, not knowing where to send you. That's really, really strange to me.
And were they able to vote? Did they finally figure it out? They had to go later, or they just wrote it off?
As far as I know, they just kind of gave up. One of the girls seemed pretty adamant, but I also didn't have an address to give her because I just kind of had driven around until I found it. Tried to give her the best directions that I could, but as far as I know, those votes didn't end up happening, which it's kind of sad.
Now, did you say yesterday that you actually had to re-register, or was she able to update your information?
So she entered me in as a new voter because that was the only way to get around the system to where it would actually say, hey, we have this person as an inactive registered voter. Do you want to update this information? And she said, we'll just register you as a new voter so you can be on your way, and I'll just update it later. So hopefully that actually happened. But, I'm wondering also how many of these people working in that department know this workaround, or were they turning voters away because they didn't know and they couldn't pull people up in the system?
Makes me wonder if you would then show up as a duplicate voter on the roll, and they just invalidate your vote because you have two entries, and they can't reconcile that at the time that the vote is counted, and so they just toss them out.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case. Maybe your vote counted and it won't be caught ever, and this will just be, zombie registrants in the Washington State voter database.
I hope so. I hope my vote counted for all the trouble I had to go through to get it there. But it doesn't seem like they're making it easy for people. And the desire is obviously there, like I said, with my coworkers. So really shouldn't be a roadblock that they don't know where to go or the information isn't accurate. Everybody.
Now, didn't you say that Shayla also had some trouble sorting all this out?
Yeah, she went online about a week ago before the election ballots needed to be turned in. And she was trying to figure out where to drop off her ballot. And she was having a hard time finding accurate information. And one of the things that she had mentioned to me that I thought was really strange was there wasn't even a place in Pasco to drop off your ballot. So Pasco, Kennewick, and Richland all are pretty close together. Sometimes it's hard to know where the boundary lines are because they're so so close.
Right.
So the fact that there's a whole city that didn't even have a place for people to go that live there to drop off their ballots, they have to actually travel to another city is bizarre. That's super strange, you know.
Yeah. Now, Pasco's in Franklin County. Pasco's not the county seat of Franklin County, is it?
Mm-mm, not that I
Okay.
know of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I was looking for any news information this morning, whether this caught the attention of the news agencies there in the Tri Cities, and I didn't really find anything. But what I did find in looking at the various county election information and population information is, so just for comparison, Kennewick, Richland, most of the people in this region know where that is. It's located in Benton County. And for comparison, Benton County has about 215,000 population. Kootenai County, which is the county that includes Coeur d'Alene, has about 185,000 person population. So they're not identical, but they're fairly close, the same size of cities.
Yeah.
And so we have Kennewick has a population of about 85,000 out of the 215, and Coeur d'Alene has a population of about 57,000 out of 185. Richland has a population of around 60,000. So I looked at the Benton County election information, and you're right, there are only two places that you can do in-person voting in all of Benton County. One is in Kennewick, the one that you hunted down and found, and the other one is in Prosser, which is 60 miles west.
Yeah, it's at least an hour drive.
And has a population of around 6,000 people. So it's just a little town.
Yeah.
They have a location. So 2 in-person locations for 215,000 people.
Yeah.
By comparison, Kootenai County has, wait for it, 74 voting locations in Kootenai County.
Person?
In-person voting locations.
Oh, wow.
One for every precinct in Kootenai County.
That's
serving
pretty crazy.
fewer people. So I guess the takeaway for me is, Washington, even before we moved out of Washington over here to Idaho, we noticed that there was a big initiative to move to more mail-in balloting in Washington state. And it seems that, well, maybe it's really taken hold and there really isn't that much of a need for a lot of in-person voting locations. But to only have 2 for a population of that size,
yeah,
tells me that, boy, if you're a Washington resident, you really need to figure this stuff out and get your mail-in ballot and not wait until the last minute, because you could just literally, if there was some kind of an emergency or something, be blocked from even voting.
Yeah. That's crazy to hear those statistics. That's really alarming, to be honest. And our demographic here, for those who aren't familiar with it, there's a lot of Hispanic people and a lot of elderly people. And my mind just was going back to thinking, man, if you had a language barrier like that, or maybe you weren't online savvy to figure this out, you'd just kind of be left in the dust, and there's really nowhere to turn to get it figured out even for next time. So
Yeah.
kind of unfortunate that, one of our basic rights of just being able to vote as a US citizen is becoming harder and harder, at least where I'm at. Good to hear that Idaho is on top of its game and giving people their opportunity that they should have.
Yeah. There definitely was a big push to get the vote out in Idaho, and I think we set some historical records for voter turnout this last cycle around. And I don't know about Washington. I've looked to see what their turnout was, but I don't think it's a conspiracy, because Benton County and most of Eastern Washington, stand solidly Republican. So I don't think the conservatives were trying to block people from voting,
right?
Or the left either. But just, kind of a sign of our times that actually exercising your centuries old right to vote in person is becoming harder and harder. And so
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your story with us today, Kristen.
Yeah.
Glad you
you're
were
welcome.
finally able to break through the confusion to get your vote cast. That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a lot of
Definitely.
people would have been that diligent.
Well, I was very motivated for it for sure. And definitely a lesson learned to make sure that I'm on top of these things in the future because I feel like it's that important. It's not a right that I want to lose or just give up because, I'm not on my due diligence. So
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Kristen.
thank you.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there is I think that the whole process of promoting the idea of mail-in ballots is a conspiracy in and of itself. They're just too easy to manipulate. And if that's the case, and that's the reason that the county only has 2 in-person polling places, I would say that they need to get on top of getting their elections officials voted for, maybe even a referendum to get them pushed out, because that's ridiculous. I mean, the number 70 something to 2 for equal populations approximately.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you think you're going to service 214,000 people with 2 polling places?
Yeah.
That just doesn't even make any sense unless, like you're saying, they're just counting on it all to be mail-in.
Yeah.
That's what you have to look back at the last elections, whether it be presidential or not, and how many people actually voted by mail, and is it working? Do they feel, is it working good enough that mail-in is okay? But that just, it screams like, okay, that's one way to take away the voter ID issue. Just mail it in.
That's just it. To me, it's just a scam. Like, it's just, I mean, what's next? You're going to have like mail-in jurors for your court cases? All these things are equally important. Why are we trying to make it easy for people? Just go show your ID, get a ballot, and vote. It's not that hard. Everybody can do that. Nobody is prevented from doing that. In spite of what the progressive left would tell you, nobody is prevented from getting an ID.
Nope.
And it's racist and hateful to think that someone doesn't have the ability to do that.
Yeah. That's the part that doesn't make sense. Is how can you be racist by asking them to have an ID?
Well, that's just the calling card of the progressive left. It's like, if you do anything that they don't agree with, you're a racist or a misogynist or, transphobe or, fascist, Hitler, Nazi.
Their label.
There's a myriad of terms for people that just don't agree with them. And the thing about it is that every time they use those terms, they themselves turn into the fascists, and they just don't know it. And so it's just a weird thing, right? But that particular situation is interesting to me because either the mail-in ballots are working or there's no push to get any kind of vote going in Washington at all, which is sad.
Well, and like she said, the address on the government website of the polling location sent people to an abandoned strip mall. I mean, come on.
Wow.
It's either gross ineptitude or there's malfeasance at play. There's not a reasonable explanation otherwise. It's just crazy.
Just out of curiosity, I wonder how the counties voted. So, yeah, like right there where Kennewick would be, it's to the south and the west of Spokane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Down towards the Tri-Cities area.
Mm-hmm.
It is part of the Tri-Cities, yeah.
So that area went blue. It's the only county in that. It's the only county east of the counties for King or Seattle and Olympia and all those counties. It's the only county east of them that went blue. Everything else went red.
That's interesting.
There might be a bigger story there.
Well, it kind of makes sense. Like she had hinted out there, the Tri-Cities has a lot of Hispanic residents there,
which
Mhm.
flipped for Trump.
which a lot of them flipped for Trump.
And
But-
it has people 45 to 67, which flipped for Trump.
There's probably also a lot of illegal immigrants there.
Oh, yes.
Maybe, but they don't count unless they're mail-in voting.
Bingo.
Bingo. Right.
What a great way to do it.
Yeah.
And if you look at the historical voting records, it's typically been Republican. You've got a lot of big government contractors down there, a lot of employment, major employment down there is government contractors for the energy lab down there at Hanford.
It's kind of weird that just that county, though, went through that. Was it just like a test case? Like it was just testing the waters to see if it would be successful? Because it seems like you would be better off doing something like that in Spokane County or in the county that has Spokane in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the county with Spokane went red.
Mhm.
That's weird.
That's strange.
Yeah, that
'Cause
just
Spokane
tells
was
you
going
something.
more and more blue for a long time.
Well, there's a lot of colleges in Spokane as
Yeah.
well in that area, and so that says something about that as well. I mean, that's an interesting. Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
How do the Catholic and Christian colleges compare as far as red and blue to public colleges?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. Like Christian colleges who don't take federal funding are probably going to go red 100%.
Yeah.
But
And
if
aren't required to report there.
yeah, but anybody who's got any kind of federal funding at all is going to have some kind of liberal think tank machine working. And, like Harvard technically is a Christian school.
Technically.
But actually there's no way it's not. I mean, it's extremely liberal.
They have gray zones. They can't be.
Yeah. And so, I don't think it's a one-for-one comparison. It depends on the federal funding and the professors that are tenured, which is another thing that probably needs to get talked about, tenure for professors.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that's destroying our schools. But in any case, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, it would be, I would love to get a little bit more information on that. But another thing that's pretty interesting about this whole thing was the kind of media failure in how it was going. I watched a video this morning where they were comparing everything that the media was saying prior to the election to everything the media was saying after the election.
It's a mess.
And to a person, they were just like, oh, I think it's going to be a landslide for Kamala.
Mhm.
Bill Maher was like, well, it's going to be razor thin, and then at the end he's going to lose, and then everybody was like, Kamala's going to win, Trump's going to lose. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall Wednesday morning when they woke up and it was confirmed,
Yes.
that Kamala was going to concede and what they were thinking at that point. I haven't watched any Bill Maher since after, but I would love to hear his take on what has happened, because I think what's going to happen is he's going to understand. If anybody on the left will understand, it'll be him. He'll be like, yeah, well, it's exactly what it is. The Democrats, they tied their saddle to the wrong horse, and now they're going to pay for it.
They wanted that money so much that they were willing to put a name in there that wasn't going to win. I mean, she got less than 2%, 1% when she ran against Biden the first time.
She got
0%.
She got 0 in the primary. Like,
So-
of all the states that supported her, you could count them all on one hand if you had no fingers. That's the way Bill Maher put it.
And now they put her up there so they can have the money.
Yeah.
Presumably.
Wow.
Yeah, presumably. Because they think that money wins elections when actually it doesn't. People win elections.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the thing with the left, right? You're not a person to the left. You're a demographic. You're a group. You're a status.
Yeah.
And so people are just done with that. They won't have anything to do with that anymore. And maybe politicians will figure this out. Maybe they'll Maybe they'll look at this as a test case and think to themselves, wow, maybe I need to actually pay attention to what the people are saying.
What they want.
And then, and now it's like Trump's taken office and they're bent out of shape because Hispanic males voted in large numbers for Trump, Hispanics in general. And the response from the progressive left was to immediately call Hispanic men misogynists. That was their immediate response. They have no clue that that's what lost the election for them in the first place. When you call people garbage, when you call them, Nazis, and you call them Hitler, and you call them racists and bigots and misogynists, and you're just constantly calling them names
Uneducated.
all the time, uneducated morons. This is what happens. They rebel against you. That's what happens.
And what better way to rebel and then just go cast a vote, keep your mouth shut, and say, okay, now what?
Yep.
Your guy goes out of power in January, and we get back into where we're supposed to be.
Could be argued that he's already out of power. I haven't heard anything.
I already
from
saw
Biden.
a headline this morning that said Trump moves Biden out early, something like that.
It might.
The spin is already.
It makes sense actually, because I haven't heard anything from Biden in like 2 months. I haven't heard anything.
And then
Is he even doing anything?
He made a little speech.
Did he?
Yeah, he did his presidential unite the nation. Let's get behind. Let's have peaceful transition. He did the obligatory speech.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, good job.
Now I heard a Democrat
His best ever.
Good job, little buddy.
I heard a Democrat senator say, well, we could ask Biden to step aside and put Kamala in so we have our first female president. It's
Oh,
like, yeah, I don't think so. You don't have the time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, whatever. It's not going to change anything.
No.
It's not like Biden's doing anything. He's just sitting in the chair.
Yep.
Whoever is empowering him is the same people that's empowering Kamala.
Yep.
So whether it's Kamala or Joe in there, it's just more of the same. It really makes no difference.
Nope.
Like honestly, I'm not like one of these people that thinks that it would be worse under Kamala because of who she is. I just don't think Kamala's in charge. I don't think Biden's in charge.
Nope.
I think that there is a group of corporate interests that are in charge.
And I think
when either one of them is in office.
Right. And I think it's pretty much the same people, or it looks to be the same people that had Obama's directors.
Well, yeah, the military industrial complex, the healthcare industrial complex, the information industrial complex. It's like you got all these different like massive, money groups, and they're all supporting Kamala. It's like that's the reason people aren't supporting you, Kamala, because you sold your soul to Satan, and nobody's interested in that. And sorry, I mean, when you have Dick Cheney endorse you, of all people, I mean, what does that say? I mean, Trump gets people to support him, and he gets Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Russell Brand, Joe Rogan. He gets these people that are on the left to support him. Who do you get? You get corporate warmongering Dick Cheney, who's already brought us into multiple armed conflicts and gotten rich off of it.
Yes.
And now he's supporting you. Well, yeah, you lost a lot of your left base when you did that. When you decided to tell all the pro-Palestinian whiners in the colleges that Israel was important for some reason, you lost all of them. It's like you just made poor choices, and it was all about identity. It was all about money, really, truly. It was all about how much money you could make on these conflicts. I was watching a thing today where they were talking about how Trump was coming in, he was going to finish the wall, and it was going to cost like $15 billion or something like that to finish the wall. And this lady was like, well, how in the world are you going to justify spending $15 billion to build this wall? Can we even afford that? And I'm thinking to myself, did we not
serious?
send $200 billion just recently to Ukraine? I mean, what's our total bill to Ukraine up to at this point? It's way over $15 billion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like we seem to come up with the money for that. Why can't we come up with $15 billion for a wall? And that's not even a thing that needs to be, it's not like it's something that we want to do. It's something we need to do. You know, it's like, yeah, let's quit supporting these wars that have nothing to do with us. Supporting a military group called NATO that it's not even interested in what we support. Did you watch JD Vance's interview with what's that guy's name? Anyway, he was asking him about that and about how, you know, how would NATO treat us? And they were talking about how there was this European country that was threatening to arrest Elon Musk if he didn't take some of the rhetoric down that Trump was pushing. And Elon was like, whatever, you know. And JD Vance said something that I thought was pretty brilliant. And to paraphrase it, he basically said, there's no reason we should be supporting a group, a military alliance that does not even support our base values, freedom of speech. If you can't even support freedom of speech, there's no reason we should be militarily aligned with you.
So NATO and UN are both.
No, they're junk.
That's garbage.
Yeah, they're junk. You know, I mean, China has one of the biggest seats at the table in the UN now. You know, so it's like, why are we aligned with these people? What's the point? I mean, in reality, you know, there's no power on earth that can withstand the United States military. It just doesn't exist. We could, at will, wipe out any country that we wanted to. At will. But we don't. Why? Because we're a moral country. That's why.
It. There's the answer right there.
And that morality is built on the foundation of freedom. And they don't understand that. They just can't comprehend how a free people can also be moral. It just doesn't make any sense to them.
They've never had it.
So, yeah, they reject freedom of speech. You know, I think a lot of these countries are going to fall in line when Trump takes office. You know, and when he's like, you know, these European leaders are fussing and complaining because he's not woke enough, you know, because they're letting in all these illegal immigrants. When he starts deporting these people,
that's going to be an interesting.
Oh, you see who he picked for the border czar, right? What was that guy's name? He was that guy that was in charge of ICE for a while, and they had a congressional hearing, and AOC tried to corner him. And he just destroyed her.
It's gonna be nice when ICE gets to do their job again.
Yeah, Tom Homan. He's the guy that was at the convention and was telling the people, if Trump gets into office and you're an illegal alien, pack your bags.
Yep, I remember that.
That's the same guy. He AOC tried to corner him one time on the separating families thing. She called it the separating families bill, but it was actually just a crime bill. And about how they were separating families because, you know, these asylum seekers or whatever. And he was just like, you know, if I got arrested for DUI and I had my child in the car, they would separate us. If you come into this country illegally, you're going to get separated from your children. That's the way that it works. Yeah. And she was like, well, they're asylum seekers. And he said, well, they need to come through a port of entry and not come in illegally.
You know, she calls them asylum seekers, but they haven't applied.
They changed the law. They wrote an executive order that anybody who came in and just said they were an asylum seeker, they got asylum.
Yeah.
That was the law that was created. And so now if they come across the border and they run across an ICE agent or a border agent, all they say is, I'm an asylum seeker.
Yep, that's
and
the
they get
password.
They get asylum.
And their hands are tied.
And there's nothing you can do. They get a court date. And then they get an app where they can actually arrange their court dates. That's why they get phones, so they can operate this app.
So now we're going to see that change.
Those people are moving out. If Homan has anything to do with it, they're moving out. Yeah. I was watching Vivek. He was in an interview with Vivek Ramaswamy. He was in an interview with Tucker Carlson, and they were talking about the dismantling of agencies, of government agencies, like the what was it called? Not the IRS, but the other one, Department of anyways, they deal with money, deal with finance. And he was saying that in total, there's like 200,000 federal employees that are employed with a lot of these agencies. And a lot of them aren't even doing anything anymore. They're not doing their mandates. And the reason they're not doing their mandates is because they ran out of things to do. And when you have all these people employed that don't have anything to do, what do? They make things to do. And so they started doing things. And these things are not actually laws. So a lot of these laws that have been established by these alphabet soup agencies that regulate corporations, that regulate businesses, that regulate construction, that regulate oil industries. A lot of those things were created without the approval of Congress. So they're actually invalid.
Mm-hmm.
They have no validation. And so they can just be removed off the books completely. And a lot of those people can just be fired because there's no reason for them to be there.
Won't that be sweet? Because just think about how much of that rolls would go away.
Oh, yeah.
And how much that money will not be paid out.
Yeah. Well, imagine what industry can do if it's unregulated.
Yep.
Not unregulated, but deregulated to a degree.
Correct.
You know, I mean, it's like when you deregulate them, they're going to be actually be able to do business. You know, I mean, imagine what our oil industry can do. We have the second largest oil reserve in the world, in the United States of America. It's completely untapped.
So let's take the handcuffs off and get them back to work.
Get the frickin' fracking going.
Yep.
Drill.
Drill,
just
baby,
like
drill.
my father-in-law said, drill, baby, drill, right? Because there's enough oil in the United States of America to make every American wealthy. That's the plan. You know, we're going to ramp up the means of production and start charging tariffs.
Yep.
And when your taxes go down dramatically because of that, you'll be thanking Trump.
Mm-hmm.
When your bread is back to $1.50 a loaf,
Instead
you'll be
of
thanking him.
$5.50 a loaf.
Yep. You'll be thanking him.
I bought sourdough yesterday and paid $5.39 and thought I'd see
Oh,
that day.
Lord. Yeah. Butter, milk,
Yep.
all of it. It's just obnoxious. So, but I mean, I guess as we're coming to the end, I think if I had one thing I would say is I would say enjoy the feeling of being back again. I would say enjoy that, but also let's not get too caught up in the moment, right? Because this is still technically not our home.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
We're just passing through. We're going to make it as good as we can. And, you know, if you voted for Trump, you did your part to make America great again. And I think that that's going to be beneficial to everyone. We did our part to continue to secure our religious freedoms and our freedom of speech. And so I think all of those things are good. But ultimately, you know, one thing that we need to remember, and going back to kind of our discussion about Nancy Pelosi, it's easy to dislike people.
Yep.
When you don't agree with them or they're not fitting into whatever, you know, kind of narrative scheme that you want the world to fit into. It's easy to dislike people. It's easy to find yourself having hatred in your heart for people. But that is not something as believers we are allowed to do.
Nope. It's
completely inappropriate for believers to have hatred in their hearts for anyone. And that's not to say that you can't disagree with them and be angry with them, and even rise up against them. That's, you know, all those things are fair. And you can rise up against someone and oppose what they do and still not have hatred in your heart. You can oppose someone that you love. That's totally possible. But I would say, you know, let's not get so caught up in all of the rhetoric that we end up being just the left in reverse, that we're just making fun of and being vile to the people that are on the progressive left just because we can. It's kind of funny right now, but, you know, there's going to come a time where we're going to have to calm down. And, you know, they're people. They're humans. And most of them are without Christ. Mm-hmm. And they need Christ. And they're going to need kind, loving people that are going to give that to them.
They need prayer.
Mm-hmm.
They need to let their hearts soften. Yep.
And our country needs that, and our Christians need
Yeah.
that. Christians need to soften their hearts about these things, and not be so apt to be agitated about all of this stuff. You know, I mean, it's just 4 years. You know, if Harris had won, you know, it would have been devastating to a degree. But it's just 4 years. In the scope of eternity, it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's just a vapor. It's like dust in the wind, as Kansas would put
Thank
it.
God they're not elected for life.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. So, but I would also be encouraged. You know, a lot of things are going to go well the next 4 years, and they've really got their act together. You know, Trump actually knows what he's doing this time around. And so, you know, they learned a lot of lessons in the first 4 years, and just don't think it's going to be the same. I think people think it's going to be the same 4 years, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be a lot different. And so, you know, buckle up and just try and be as kind as you possibly can, and have peace. Be at peace, if at all possible. Be at peace
With all men.
with all men. And let's
And
work
women.
on that, I would say. Rod, you got any final words? We got about 5 minutes.
I just got to say that, you know, there'll be some cleanup and we'll see that happen, but we have to remember that our job hasn't changed. And we kept thinking, okay, if she got in, our job was still going to be to spread the word. Our job is still to spread the word, and our job is still to share with people that there is a better light, and it doesn't have to do with the left or the right. It has to do with Christ.
Yeah. Good word. Ken?
Yeah, I agree. Enthusiastically. I mean, the word around our house now is don't gloat.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Don't gloat. So listeners, don't gloat about this. Yep. We had a good turnout. We had a good result from the election, but guess what? This country is still severely divided.
Mm-hmm.
One side is madder than ever and are going to be doubling down on a lot of things. And we need to be reaching out to them. And actually, I'm going to be preaching on this in my next sermon coming up in a couple of weeks, how we need to work towards solving this problem that still exists in this country, and we need to do it.
Pursuing peace and unity. That's a great one.
I'm reminded of Proverbs chapter 24, verses 17 and 18. This is God speaking. He says, "Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it, and it displeases him," that is, your rejoicing, your heart being glad at their misfortune.
Mm-hmm.
"Lest the Lord see it and displeases him, and he turn away his wrath from him." So the Lord is watching how we respond in this moment, and he's calling us to be Christ-like, not to be Pharisaical. So that's our charge and the direction we should go.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, that about does it for us today. As always, thank you for joining us. If you have a comment, question, or an idea for an episode, send us an email to 3p@ethelbaptistchurch.org. If your idea gets used on the show, you could be the proud recipient of the now world infamous 3P coffee mug. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks to Ethel Baptist Church and its members for their generous support of this ministry. And again, thank you for listening. Until next time, remember the Great Commission. Go into all the world, reach the lost with the gospel, and build disciples who can do the same. And with that, we are out.